Today we are going to be learning to round whole numbers. If you would label the next page in your math notebook, rounding whole numbers. Remember, you can pause this video at any time. Rounding whole numbers is what we're going to do today. The meaning to round a whole number is to change it to a number that is easier to work with. Why might you round a whole number? Just think about that. Look around my room. Think about life and why you might round a whole number. A couple of reasons you might do this is when you only need an estimate for an answer, you don't need an exact answer. Some examples might be the population of an entire city. Instead of telling you I have 295,613 people living in there, I might just say I have about 216,000. Okay? The number of students at Boswell. You may not need to know that there's exactly 738 students. We could just say there's about 700. We could even round that up and say there's about 750. So this is what we're going to be working on today. If you will go ahead and copy that number line down, we are going to come up with numbers that round to 300. Numbers that round to 300, I want you to be thinking about that. Some numbers that might round to 300 would be maybe this number right here, which would be 320. The reason it would round down to 300 if I'm rounding to the nearest hundred is because 320 is way down here. 400 is way up here. Do you see how big of a jump it would have to go from here all the way up there? That's a long ways away. But look at this tiny little jump that it has right there. You would not have to do nearly as far to do that. Another number that might round all the way up or all the way down to 300, let's say right about here would be 335. It would still round down to 300 because look at its jump compared to the big long jump of 400. What if I put 308? That would be closer to 300 than it would be 400. I want you to look at the digits of 308, 320, and 335. Think about why those digits and why they would go down to 300 instead of up to 400. Next, we're going to look at numbers. Before we move on, I would like for you to add two more numbers right here. Right here, I want you to write two more numbers down that would round to 300. Write down two numbers that would round down to 300. When you're done with that, I want you to go ahead and copy this number line down. And now we are going to find some numbers that round to 400. Where do you suppose those numbers would be? These numbers that rounded down to 300 were on this side of 350. Numbers that round to 400 are going to be on this side. So we could do this number right here. Let's see. Let's say about 376. That would round all the way up to 400 because look at its little jump compared to the big jump backwards. It's a long ways to go. So we would say 376 is going to round up to 400. We could also use this number right here and say 392. That's going to be really close to 400. I could say 351. It's almost in the middle, but it's still closer. 350 is exactly in the middle, so 351 is going to be a shorter jump to 400 than it would all the way down to 300. So 351 is still closer than 400. The only number that is ever confusing is numbers that are exactly in the middle, like 350. 350 will always round up. Okay, I want you to go ahead and create one more number line, and we are going to round this number right here. I want you to try and say that number to yourself. We are going to round 292,430 to the nearest 100,000. First thing we need to do is decide which digit is in the 100,000. If you remember, we have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, and 100,000s are right there. So this 2 right here is in my 100,000s place. That one right there. So I need to figure out whether this big long number is closer to 200,000 or if it's closer to 300,000. So I made a number line here. I'm going to put 200,000 here. Or is it going to be closer to my next 100,000, which is 300,000? I looked at my digit and I said, okay, is that closer to 200 or will I go up to 300? So now I drew my number line. Here's 200,000, here's 300,000, and I have to think about where this would go. Well, here's my halfway mark. What is halfway between 200,000 and 300,000? Halfway is going to be 250,000. So now that I know where my halfway is, I should be able to figure out what 292,000 is going to go. See if you can figure out where that goes. It's going to be about right here. So 292,000. Are we going to make this small little jump to 300,000? Or are we going to go all the way back here to 200? That's a long jump. I think the closest number would be 300,000. 300,000 is my answer. Okay, so we are now going to do a few examples without number lines. So I want you to write these examples down. If I asked you to round 128,552 to the nearest, let's say 100,000. First of all, we have to decide where 100,000 is. Maybe I should spell that right first. First, we need to figure out where 100,000 is. Let's review place value one more time. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000. So my 100,000 here is 100. So I have to ask myself, is this a 100,000 or is it going to be 200,000? 128, is that closer to 100 or 200? Your answer would be 100,000. What if we rounded this number to the nearest 10,000? What digit is in the 10,000s? The 2. So now I have to keep the 1 in front. I say, okay, 128,552. Is that going to be 120,000 or 130,000? So I look at my number behind me. Is 128, is 28 going to be closer to 20 or is it going to be closer to 30? 28 is closer to 20 or 30. That's right, it is closer to 130,000. Let's round this number to the nearest 100. My first 5 is in the hundreds, so I'm going to look at this. Everything in front of it stays the same. 128,000, is it going to be 500 or 600? 128,552. So I'm just looking at the 552, and I'm going to the nearest 100. Is that closer to 500 or 600? So I ignore these first few for now. 552, is that closer to 500 or 600? Your answer is 600. Let's now round to the nearest tens. round to the nearest tens, I'm going to look at the digit that's in the 10 place, which is a 5. Everything in front of that number stays the same. So I can even go ahead and write down 1, 2, 8, 5. So I have my hundreds, my thousands, my 10,000, my 100,000s written down. I'm just looking at my tens place. I have a 5, so I have a 52. Is 52 going to be closer to 50 or 60? 52, is it closer to 50 or 60? My answer is 50. So let's go ahead and write our rules down. If you have not figured out our rules yet, first thing you need to do is underline the place you're rounding to. Underline the place you're rounding to. Next, you're going to look at the digit behind. Determine whether to round up or stay in that place. So your numbers in front of the place stay the same. Numbers behind the place become 0. Okay, when you are done writing those rules down, I would like for you to complete these examples. Correctly, and then you may come get your assignment. So round each of these numbers to the underlying place value. When you're done, bring that to Miss Johnston. Make sure you understand all this. If you need to go back and review anything, understand anything, listen to anything, or if you just are lost and need help, come see me. Otherwise, when you have rounded to the correct underlined place, come get your assignment from me.